Good morning, everyone.
Everybody surviving?
Yes.
Yeah, kind of. Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for being here. Welcome to kind of building a 2022 revenue optimization team. We're going to kind of just keep this a really open format. We'll introduce each other or have each other introduce themselves. And then we're just going to talk about what do you guys do for your teams? Like, how are you actually merging sales, marketing, revenue management, distribution? How are you getting people to work together? And we're going to talk about maybe some ideas or thoughts to help you all take away some actionable items to build for 2022. Alignment, I think, is one of the most important things now for companies going forward, because the landscape is being defined again, right, from a revenue management perspective. So with that, I'll go ahead and let these guys introduce themselves, and then I'll close with mine.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Gaster, and I am the co-owner and president of Tybee Vacation Rentals on Tybee Island, Georgia. My sister Carrie and I founded the company 21 years ago, and we manage about 300 properties on Tybee and around 20 in the Savannah market. Our staff, we have about 120 staff members, over 60 to 80 year-round employees. So just to give you an idea of the size of our organization.
Awesome. John.
Morning, everyone. My name is John deRoulet. I'm with Wheelhouse, which is a dynamic pricing platform. If you haven't talked to us or don't know about us, please do. Before that, I got a lot of experience doing revenue management, actually working with Doug in our previous life at Stay Alfred, having led and built their revenue management team from pretty much the beginning of that company all the way through its end. So a lot of urban experience, and excited to talk about how the organization kind of grew and we worked through these issues of how to scale and distribute responsibilities to be optimized.
Awesome, thanks. And my name is Doug Truitt. I am the head of revenue success for Rentals United. We are a channel manager, and my role is kind of focused on building new products and transparency for our clients in terms of data, pickup, performance, and whatnot. My background, as John said, we worked together at Stay Alfred for quite a few years, built that company up, and then kind of COVID took us down. But prior to that, I have 19 years of experience in the hotel industry, so bring a lot of that experience to the game too. So, well, let's kind of get into a few questions. Also, as a side note, John and I do for fun, not plug our companies or anything. We do a podcast together called Rev Bites. So if you can, go search YouTube for Rev Bites. And we just kind of geek out about revenue management and distribution, talk about our mistakes and failures from the Stay Alfred days, as well as kind of what's going on in the landscape, but just some cool topics. So let's ask a couple questions. I'm going to kind of ask Amy some, because she's a CEO of a company, and it's kind of important to understand how the top leader of the company decides to organize their teams together and how to get them rowing in the same direction. So, you know, the question we have, I guess, is, you know, why is it important for distribution, revenue, marketing, and sales to kind of work together?
Well, it's very important that those teams are all on the same page. Our org structure is we have a director of marketing who is over a team of 3 or 4 marketing associates. We have a sales manager, reservation sales manager, who's over our vacation planners and guest services. And we have a revenue manager who has been with the company, since we started, since she was 16. Y'all might know Katrina. She is a revenue nomad now. She is traveling the world in New Zealand, and she is our revenue manager wherever she goes. So technology is very important to how we come together as a team. We communicate through Basecamp as well as through Workplace. We set all of our goals through Google Data Studio, and we communicate with twice a month meetings on our revenue and projections. So the team, in the last year, it's everybody's world, but we come together in a very digital environment. We Zoom and go over our goals and communicate online on what's happening.
Awesome. Maybe John, I don't know if you can maybe answer that, some of your experience from like our Stay Offered days too, kind of like what you think is important, kind of with those lining them.
Yeah, I think an important thing to consider is when you're looking at that org chart is you don't always have, depending on the size of your company or where you are in your growth, you may not always have different people in these as specific roles. So when we think about distribution, sales, revenue management, marketing, those may be functions that one person is doing multiple of, or may even be split among different people in the company as you grow. So I think it's, for us, when we were kind of coming in Stay Alfred, it was really big for us to be coordinating whoever was part of these functions on at least a weekly basis. Both for the executive team, making sure that when they were developing KPIs, we weren't developing KPIs where they were working in opposition to each other. That was always, I think, the hardest between our sales teams and our revenue management teams, because sometimes revenue management teams say no, whereas sales teams don't like to be told no, that they can't do something when it's like ready to be signed. But for us, as those people shifted, and eventually they had their own heads, kind of like the org chart you described, but for a long time, some of those functions actually sat among various people, or they were doubled up, and just making sure that we were coordinating on them, and identifying with the executive teams what the primary priorities were at any given time.
I agree with that. As our company was growing, I mean, when Carrie and I first founded our company, she and I did everything. So I was, getting new listings and acquisitions and doing accounting. I have a degree in English literature, by the way, and
Awesome.
and Carrie is operations mastermind. And then as we ended up bringing in more people, and as our organization grew over the years, yes, at one time, Katrina, as a director of sales and marketing, was doing all of that, was doing the pricing, was doing acquisitions, was doing coaching for res agents, and managing guest services. And it just gets to be, once you get to 5,000 reservations, 6,000 reservations, 10,000 reservations, 12,000 reservations, we had to specialize and compartmentalize those roles and those job descriptions and the expectations for each department. So it's definitely been a curve that we are continuously evaluating every single year.
Yeah, that's great. I got a question for the audience, and maybe if you guys can like raise your hands. Who uses like percentage rate markups on different channels? Okay, quite a few hands. Now, how many people are actually coordinating meetings between each of your departments to actually understand where you should be putting those markups in market-wise, or how much, and that kind of thing? A little less hands. So I think it's a good point to talk about, and an experience that John and I had in kind of help creating at Stay Alfred, which was we actually rallied these various department heads and teams together for a once-a-week meeting where we looked at our booking pickup performance in relation to channel share as well as room types, and looked at the rate markups that we had on certain properties and markets and cities and channels to actually assess, were we actually hurting the pickup performance by the rate markups we had, or were we helping it, or could we actually push it a little bit further? And I think it came out, a lot of those weekly meetings came out some healthy discussions about what was marketing's initiative for certain markets, and why were they targeting certain SEO or AdWord campaigns to certain areas or certain types of demographics. And then it was revenue saying, I'm falling short on my goals in this aspect, so I need focus here. And then distribution saying, well, have we done these promotions of these APIs? And sales is going, I need to make more sales, I need to close more, I need better deals. So maybe, I don't know if John, you want to talk on that, or even Amy, if you have some experience kind of in a little bit of congruence with that too.
As far as communications and goals, our marketing team has a weekly meeting where they go over the entire marketing strategy for email campaigns, social. They get with Katrina on what specials we're going to be running. Recently, we've made decisions where, for instance, before extended stays were not bookable online, and with COVID and with our length of stay growing, we wanted to make that bookable. So now we increase that up to 89 nights, and then just conversations there, and some of them are booking at ridiculous rates, by the way. And now it's like, oh, we should do a special. We're getting into the off season. How, what could we do? Would we do 40% off? Would we do 50% off? What makes sense? And what did these properties do last year? So it's a conversation that involves our revenue manager, me, our marketing director, and the sales manager, so that we can actually book more on our website and also have that go out to distribution. Because we were finding through the pandemic, we were getting some 3 and 4 week bookings off of Vrbo, and our average length of stay is 5.2 nights. So all of a sudden you have, a 3 week stay at top dollar coming in from a guest we have never had an experience with before. It definitely starts a conversation that leads to other areas. So maybe we should send an email out to this. Maybe what should we do on our social? And so I think the more that the team is collaborating and sharing what's happening, it just, the creativity starts flying.
Yeah, when we were at Stay Alfred, it started out where we actually weren't very coordinated. We kind of had these different silos, and we were doing these marketing initiatives, which didn't seem from the revenue manager side to be that effective. And we started talking, and it was like, okay, so revenue management really needs to provide it's not that the strategies or the ideas were wrong. They're actually generally very good, but the marketing team at that time didn't have a sense of the timing or the booking survey. So it was like being able to start meeting and coordinating on that allowed us to really target where our resources were going. Eventually, we actually, as the company got larger and larger, and this may be relevant to people who really got into a scale where they have a bunch of different leaders that have full teams under them, we actually put all of these organizations under one VP. And so we suggested that they go under our marketing VP. Stay Alfred was a really OTA-enabled distribution. Most of our distribution was actually being done via OTA, so it made a lot of sense for us to put it under the marketing so that the revenue management could provide expertise on the systems, which a lot of our team had, as well as a survey of what was going on. We did that to the sales team as well to kind of direct where their efforts could go. And then they developed a grand strategy, and the sales team and the distribution teams executed on that. That may not be correct for your organization, though. I know that I've talked to a number of great organizations who have really strong direct booking. Your sales leader may be the most experienced or knowledgeable person. I think it's also really important to understand something that occurs in these revenue organizations as they grow is the expertise of the systems themselves and the kind of feel for the business trends is usually it's not always going to be in one department. It's going to usually be with people who've developed them. So those are going to be individuals in your organization that you want to make sure are included, because they're going to have a sense when you bring new people on or you have these ideas, they'll be able to provide some feedback about how the business is done. I think in a small company, the CEO or the entrepreneur who started it is usually going to be doing that. But you also want to find those people within your revenue organization who have either technical expertise that other people don't have, or also sense of the business as well, because that's going to be important as you kind of distribute these responsibilities among your teams.
Awesome. And I believe Karen is kind of our facilitator. She has a microphone, so we're trying to keep this a very open forum too, so we'd love to have any questions that come from the audience on this. We're just going to kind of keep talking about strategies and ways to think about things. We really want people to come away with some action items from this, because we all know that we've attended a lot of conferences in the past. I know this is the first one in a while, but sometimes you don't feel like you come away with a conference going, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to try this, try that, and we really want to achieve that. So if you have questions that can help stimulate that, we'd love to help it if we can. Yeah, question right there.
I have one. Theron Gore from East West Hospitality. I'm wondering about the mix between, especially as you scale up, the mix between systems and people, and how you kind of manage that. It's as Ben said earlier, we're world class at throwing people at problems. But as you scale up, I'm wondering how or as you're now sort of continuing to scale, what you're kind of looking at in terms of filling gaps that are starting to happen.
We are very systemized in our business. I think one of the first Verma conferences that was in Atlanta like 20 years ago, they were giving sessions on eMyth, and I don't know if y'all are familiar with eMyth, your business, but where you're working on your business, not in your business, and creating those systems that your staff really understands how to operate. For instance, our reservations manager, Carrie McGeorge, she's been with us 10 years, and she started out as a vacation planner, and so creating succession within the organization, and now she's over guest services and sales, reservation sales. And if anything happens, like the minute when we had COVID cancellations and we implemented our storm plan, she's out there putting together an SOP. This is what we do if someone calls for cancellation. This is where it goes. We reached out to other people. Stacy over there helped us. He gave us a great tip we created a property that we filtered all those cancellations into. And so having the systems in place and also having the network in place where if you're not quite sure what to do with your technology, that it's good to have that. We also switched our property management system last year, and so now we're finding new systems and creating new efficiencies and triggers and automations and texting, and internally we communicate on Facebook Workplace. I don't know, do any of y'all use Workplace within your organizations? If not, it is super awesome. It is like Facebook, but it's for your workforce. And so that is where it's our hub of announcements. It's where we put our guest survey scores. It's where the schedules go out. It's where the shout outs go. So we're in there. We're also in Basecamp. So we have a Basecamp for every single property. We have a marketing Basecamp. We have a revenue management Basecamp. And so right now, Katrina's posting once a week how we're pacing for Labor Day, how many 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms are open, and the sales, the owner team, owner services. So it's very transparent. Owner services can look and see what we're talking about in revenue management, and then if an owner asks a question, then we're able to reference it. So I think systems are a huge importance to our business, and as our business changes, making sure that it's all in the computer and that there's a process.
Yeah, I think in answering a little bit of that too, I think I picked up on something you said that really resonates with me is at the top level, it's transparency within your company. I think it's what it starts with, right? When you're scaling and growing and you're adopting new systems and new methodologies and efficiencies, like transparency and communication is always going to be at the core of delivering that and making that happen, right? At Stay Alfred we used Workplace as well, and it was a great way to unify a lot of the younger generation people that were working for us to be kind of in a social media type platform, but it was business related. And you could create tutorial videos. You could create all kinds of resources that you could put in one place where people could access and say, oh, how do I get to this one thing on this new system we joined up with, or we did this thing? And it was a really great way. The other part, kind of what John said earlier, is those key folks who've been there from the beginning, who've migrated to different systems and have that knowledge base and experience of what they're trying to do with new systems and as they scale and grow, are super crucial at making sure they're part of building SOPs and processes and the best way to help educate the rest of the company to do it. Because as you scale and grow, you're going to be adding a lot of new people, but you're also going to be turning over. Some people are just not going to be up for the scale of your business growing and getting bigger because it becomes a different environment. And so you have to have a way to really educate and help people. And I think the core for me comes from transparency and just being there. One example that we did at Stay Alfred towards the last 2 years was we put up a chalkboard in the big bullpen office, and we wrote, they had a thermometer to show like, here was our company KPIs for this month, next month, and 2 months after that, of what the revenue was budgeted to be for the company, where we were at, what the ADR occupancy was, what our review score was as a company, and just to have everybody walk by that thing and see it and have the transparency of how the company was doing. I think that was a major component to having people feel like they knew what was happening with the company, which then had them invest more into scaling and new systems and want to learn new things.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we could talk about. I think, particularly because these needs change at different parts of the company. I think one of the things when I'm thinking about systems is you need, especially if you're a scaling company, but even if you're not a scaling company, is efficiency, right? The goal of these systems is, in many cases, to do a better job, but it's also to increase the efficiency because all systems require people, and if you have the right people, you may have, I think a lot of us have the experience where you're starting out, you're growing, people are wearing a lot of hats, and you really see who is understanding these systems and really bright. And then as you scale and you double and triple and add on more units, it may be really easy for you to watch someone who's really good start filling all of their time with these maintenance things that they invented. So they figured it out, and that's how you know they were great, but now they're not able to leverage that kind of brain power to solve new problems because they're stuck maintaining something. And I think when you, as a business leader, that's something you want to be aware of. If you think of these people who really figured stuff out and they're like just doing, like filling in rates or doing things, that's like really an opportunity for you to look at a system to increase the efficiency of what you're doing, because you want to leverage those people's brain. Not, you can also do it with people. Maybe then, you can teach them and they can start to train people up. But a lot of the time, there's an opportunity for systems to come into play.
Well, an example of something we've been going through with an example of a system. So, as I said, we've just moved into a new property management system. And so for us, it's trying to find our dashboards. And so our marketing director has, collaborated with other managers using similar system, and she's now doing SQL and putting together Google Data Studios that it has become our dashboard. And so when our leadership team gets together and she's showing them the revenue and sales reports that she's put together, now owner services wants a dashboard. Now maintenance wants a dashboard, and your marketing department, which is, to me, the brains of the organization, it just always works that way. But, now she's putting together a maintenance work order report for our operations team so that they can see the status of every single work order, what is out there, what is open, what's closed, how much we've billed, and in running all of the variables. And these are just reports that don't exist necessarily in your property management system. So I think marketing can provide support to all segments of the organization, from front desk. She just created one for owner services where they have a dashboard where we have put in all of the properties, their individual revenue goals, where they're pacing to each of their goals, and then we can also break that out by property types or however, number of bedrooms, so that owner services team can have meaningful conversations with our clients. So
That's awesome. I think another idea too that might be a suggestion for folks when you get to a certain size and scale of your business is to at Reynolds United, we just hired, I think it was 4 or 5 months ago, a technical writer. So somebody who actually is translating from the people who know those systems and know those things and the integrations, and technically writing it in a way that, no offense, but down to a 2-year-old could understand how to use it and how to do something with it. And I think that's a valuable thing to do for an organization. I think you could do that with your own business, is hire a technical writer, and as you even get bigger, you might even want to create something like, I think Streamline does it. They have Streamline University, where they actually have like a college kind of type feel about learning certain aspects of it. And if you can do that for your own company, your onboarding is faster for new employees. Your churn of losing employees is probably less because people feel like they have the knowledge to be successful. And I think you can apply new systems and take on multiple different products if you need to make your business more successful.
We talk a lot about more too, and I think one thing that is really important, particularly if you're changing systems, is an opportunity to do it, but also if you have pretty strong leaders within either a single silo or part of the silo organizations, but remembering to cut things out sometimes. We had a number of experiences at Stay Offered. I was there. I was one of the first 10 employees. So I remember when we would do things for a certain reason, and then these processes would just carry through the company, even though the reason we were doing it didn't exist anymore. This was a follow-up for this other manual data thing we had to do.
It was
people just kept
10
doing
demos
the
a
thing,
week.
right? And so sometimes you have to ask or be in a position, or if you have the opportunity to ask, is like, does anyone remember why we're doing this? And is there another way we could do it? Or like, you know, I mean, just asking why you're doing something sometimes, if you had a process for a long time, is useful. The same thing is true of reports. Everyone always wants to see more reports, and then you get used to developing them and sending them out. We would like twice a year take, not all at the same time, but we would just like stop sending a report. And
Were you manually sending reports?
well, like building these reports, they would go out to the executive team or whoever asked. And if nobody said anything to us after like two times going by of not sending it, we would just kind of like quietly stop and then maybe broach the subject to the team. It was like, is there information you were interested in seeing that you weren't seeing?
Or wait till
'Cause we'd
somebody
be
was
spending
like,
time on these. You
where
know?
was that report? I hadn't seen
Nobody
that in a couple
noticed
weeks.
when you hit your record sales goal, and
Well, you know, we had a lot of, people would always ask us for a lot of data that like, I think they're like, man, it'd be great if we could just see this data all the time, but they only really wanted to look at it once. But then you just keep producing it, right? And your team's taking time, they're maybe even doing work to continue to develop it, and you want to make sure that that's actually landing, especially when you're going out to other teams. I mean, if you have a pretty collaborative group between like your marketing who are already working together, that you're less likely to do that, right? Because you're communicating all the time. But sometimes you're communicating with teams less often, and you know that they need some information, and they'll kind of tell you sometimes, but maybe they'll stop looking at it. So it's like, I think it's good to have someone in the organization, or especially as a leader, to just remember that it's not always about adding more. Sometimes that efficiency can be gained by rearranging things, by rearranging functions, by going, hey, you're doing this, and this is where that expertise comes in. When you know people who really understand the systems, you can ask them. It's like, hey, do you notice anyone doing the same thing in 2 different teams? That's probably the biggest thing I miss about being in the office, is I used to go and talk to the other teams a lot just so I could observe what they were doing, because I could make connections. I could talk to people and say, hey, whatever blah, blah, blah is doing in guest services, like I noticed that blah, blah, blah just told me they were working on a similar set of data. Maybe you guys can connect so you don't have to do the same thing over again. If you can identify people within your organization to be able to do that, I think it's really helpful, because bloat is a serious issue, particularly as you scale. And you may find that there's a lot more resources available if you allow people to stop doing the things that actually aren't contributing, because people aren't looking at it.
It's a really good point, pausing, right? I mean, especially when things are scaling and growing, sometimes you're caught up in like, go, get more. But like John said, like I think pausing, taking a moment, giving yourself to give your company, your team, and everybody else a break to process it. I know John and I had that experience a few times where we would tell leadership, like, hey, just give us 6 weeks. Can we stop onboarding new properties for 6 weeks to perfect the processes, and let's do it. And unfortunately, they only give us like a week. But that perspective needs to be there, because sometimes you need to assess what is going on and pause and appreciate what's happening. I'd like to ask, actually, it's kind of a little bit touchy maybe for some people, but let's identify personalities a little bit, okay? So marketing folks, probably very extroverted, right? Like to be creative and think about things, and they're very, 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 very creative. Revenue managers, probably more introverted and want to be able to just look at data, get it done, make decisions, make it happen. Distribution folks, maybe a little bit of both of that. And then you got sales folks who are probably very, very alpha-driven, extroverted, right? So let me ask maybe Amy and John also too, and if anybody would like to give some feedback, how do you blend those personalities and get them to all row in the same direction?
I'm fortunate that Maria, our marketing director, has the most balanced DISC assessment I've ever seen in my life. She has a math degree and did go to Harvard, and she is also incredibly creative. So she thinks in spreadsheets, and she has her spreadsheet analytical time and her data mining time, and then she has her, I'm going to be creative and come up with our next email, and it's, hi, would you like a quickie? And I'm like, great job, Maria. I bet that's going to have a wonderful open rate. So she will go from full-on analytics to being creative, and even say, I just need to do some graphic design for a while. Katrina as well. She is, I would say, as a revenue manager, well, she's a she, which I think is unusual and from what I can tell. And she also is incredibly analytical, and but she's also very much an alpha and a extrovert and a driver. She's a high DI. We do DISC assessments on our leadership team. We work with Sue from Sue Jones. She's an HR consultant, and we do those DISC assessments, which that is very helpful with our leadership team so that everybody understands each other's personality profile and how they communicate, and more importantly, how they do not like to communicate. So I don't know if y'all do any personality assessments, but we love it. It's fun.
Yeah, that's a good one. John?
No, I'm interested to know your thoughts, Doug.
I remember doing the personality assessment. I think we did like 2 different ones at State Alfred. And it was amazing to see the spectrum of what you perceived on certain people, and to actually see the results within your leadership team of how everybody actually ended up testing. Because it was, nobody could peek at anybody else's stuff before we went to like an off-site retreat and actually looked at what happened. And it was interesting to see the different personalities shape. And it actually helped, I think, in some ways, the go forward of understanding what where they fell in. Were they super extroverted? Were they very creative? Were they not getting the things and support they needed to match their personality to make them operate on all 8 cylinders, kind of thing? So that was kind of my thoughts when we did those kinds of things. It was great.
Yeah, I think, you're never going to, it would be nice if we could develop a series of KPIs where everything just rolled up and everything was totally aligned. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be some tension, right? Particularly, I think, between sales groups and analytics groups. Otherwise, you need to develop a certain tension, I think, for sales teams to begin with. And I think for us, what helped is if among the team that's coordinating, if there is someone who is kind of able to be like the judge, and like what it sounds like for your team, we had someone who's like super even keel, who would like listen, and people really trusted him and liked him, and he would listen to if there was a place of tension, usually between in our team either revenue management and sales, or revenue management and our business development. But I'm sure there was other ones. I just wasn't involved because I was only involved with the revenue management side. But he would listen and be able to make a decision that we could move forward with that would kind of like blend that tension. Say, okay, I hear you both. Those are both justified, but this is kind of the direction that I think we've chosen to go. And so knowing, I think, there is a place for a little bit of hierarchy within a collaborative environment. It doesn't necessarily have to always be present, but people know that they can rely on it if there's an impasse that's reached. There is someone who can kind of break a stalemate if, it's not necessarily that they're bad ideas, but they're just maybe different directions, and not everyone is agreed. If you know that there's someone you can go, it might even not be in that organization, it might be your CEO, or it might be your, CFO or someone else. But if there is someone, I think that a collaborative group knows that they can go to break the stalemate, the tension actually allows you to be very productive, right?
So what I heard John just say is hire a mediator for your business, and if not, identify somebody within your company and leadership that can fit that role, kind of, and meld everybody together and kind of help keep this ship going.
Well, and also making sure that everybody's working towards the same goals. So you were mentioning the KPIs, and also I think that relates to, it needs to relate to their incentive plans, and sales and marketing and revenue areas are the easiest place in the organization to have very robust incentive plans, because everything is measured and it is treasured, and right down from the person who's booking it of what their sales goals are for the month, what our rent goals are, what our service, our NPS scores, our guest services scores, and all of them get a little piece of that pie. The marketing team has their own metrics. That was something before we weren't quite sure how to measure that for someone doing social media or content writing, but we ended up making a similar scoreboard for them of, okay, well, this is our goal for our number of social posts, this is our goal for the number of emails that we're sending out, and if you hit that or if you exceed that. And also, they deserve a share of the pie when we meet our rent goals for the month, because they're the ones who are writing the property descriptions. They're also, you mentioned onboarding. Our onboarding checklist in Basecamp, I don't even know how many items it is. It's over 100 items on this checklist that are all assigned out to the various teams. but there's an incentive for the property has to be launched within 15 days. And if that's met, if it's not met. And so looking at where we need to focus the activity and that everybody has their eye on the same prize, not just in the KPIs, but all the way down to their paycheck.
Awesome. One thing that might be a takeaway for everybody or an action item to consider, I don't know if anybody's heard of EOS or Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a program and there's a book about it. You can look it up, but it basically helps to align leadership and goals of a company to really get people understanding how to do it. I mean, how many times, by a show of hands in this room, have you had multiple people try to own a certain project or a certain thing, and you kind of have to like try to steer somebody in the right way? Anybody have that happen? A few people, yeah. So one thing, we did that at Stay Offered, but we did that at the senior leadership level, and some of us in the mid-level started to adopt it too, but they had this thing called rocks, right? Who has a rock in their hand? Who's owning that rock? And it might be that the main driver within that project, that rock, isn't directly related to like the concentration of that individual's department or responsibility, but that person was gonna drive delegates of people who can make stuff happen within that project. Somebody can own that project and make sure and see it through to the end. And there's a way to organize and have regular meetings to keep people on track with those rocks on a weekly meeting and kind of stuff. So I would recommend people looking at that and see if it's something for you or some derivative of that. But that would help too, to kind of prioritize and organize what people are doing and who's owning it and who's making it happen. I'd love to field the audience a little bit. I might call on somebody as a hotspot, but I see Dennis from Casiola over there, the CEO of Casiola. If you don't mind, you can say no, but would you mind maybe if you could tell us a few tidbits on how you rally your team from like a revenue management, distribution, marketing, kind of like how you get everybody, all those pieces kind of flowing together? Is there any tricks that you use?
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge, of course. We use similar systems as you guys do. So we have reporting. We also use Data Studio. We send it out to all the stakeholders every morning. We also have built our own software tools, because if you send the whole full report to a property inspector, they just not gonna understand what it's about and what they have to look at. So we have like for each department, from housekeepers to property inspectors to reservationists, we have custom reports and KPIs like reviews, cleaning scores, those kind of things. So we try to tie reviews back to exact reservations and clean, so that the housekeepers really see the result of what they did in the end experience from the guest.
That's awesome. That's great feedback. Reviews, I think, is a really good opportunity to rally a team too. People, a lot of times, revenue managers will see reviews as like, hey, how can I get the listings performing faster in the search results and that kind of stuff. But it's also a really good operational and rallying of like what's working, what's not working for those teams, to then expose those and exfoliate opportunities with it within those strategy kind of meetings and stuff.
Well, and being transparent with it. So the great thing, one of the great things with Workplace is it's our entire company, even our seasonal housekeepers. And so when we are posting the guest scorecard, and then normally the guest services manager takes a sampling of 5 or 10 of the actual comments in the property, and then there are shout outs that are given and the housekeeper is tagged, or the inspector, if an owner check-in. So we are sharing these scoreboards in our Workplace, and it's amazing where before, when it's the people working in the office, and then there's the people working in the field, the inspectors and the housekeepers and maintenance, they never got to see really the part of our corporate culture. And so now it's marketing launches a new property and posts the pictures on there, and this owner said this about how great that we've done in setting up the property, and housekeepers are getting excited about this. People throughout the organization can see what is happening within the company and get really excited about it and comment on it. So I love that part of it.
That's great.
I think that For those who haven't used Workplace, it's a really excellent way to be positive, especially with your field people, because they're the ones who really have to deal with a lot of the issues on site. And I think we had a similar experience in terms of just there was a lot of positivity, especially directed at and received for the people in the field. It does bring up something that I think is really interesting within these kind of cross-departmental functions, especially if we're collaborating a lot, is I don't know if people think the same way I do, but I was really into like, you know, I think play is a really important aspect of creativity. If you are in a role where you need to develop a lot of creativity, you need to create some mental space for people to be creative. It's very hard to be creative. We know that incentives, you know, really high incentives don't actually inhibit creativity generally. There's a couple studies on that about like a matchbox and a candle. They're pretty interesting to read about how incentives can inhibit creativity. And so we did a lot of things between our teams that were, you know, generally recreational. People were working really late, but a lot of like fun things that we could do that I think really helped us be able to collaborate all the time. One of them was like we always did GIF wars. We communicated a lot through GIFs. So the different teams would like basically be communicating in GIFs and riffing off of each other. That was like one goofy thing. We also did a lot of contests. Yeah, like we would challenge like the other, like revenue management would always challenge the marketing team to like some kind of humor contest where it was like some kind of dancing contest, or like we did this whole thing with the New Yorker caption contest, and we asked our software team to like vote on it. And I felt, you know, we weren't doing this all the time, and often our teams were working very late. So being able to develop this kind of non-work collaboration, I had felt was an intrinsic aspect to us to be able to work through things when it was difficult. And also really gave us an opportunity to build bonds that, you know, my team would have ideas with people that were not being led from a leadership level. They were developing kind of spontaneously.
Yeah, I remember John and I used to have we had few seats between us and a bullpen, and we had a chess game that was sitting there, and we had a little black and white flip card, and it was like we would just make changes every time we need to make a move or do something. But I think that's really important. I think we're probably running out of time, but I want to address a few things just because in the spirit of trying to make sure you guys have some actionable and takeaways and things that go from that. Some of the things I heard us talk about and from the audience too is number one, you know, identify who could be your potential like mediator in your company, and have that person really be at the center of a lot of meetings in your leadership roles to really help kind of keep the ship going in the right way, whether that's your CEO or somebody else. And then I think taking, you know, action to really making it, even if you don't have a whole lot to talk about in a certain week, make it dedicated to have a meeting with all those players from marketing, revenue, sales, and like John said at the end there, having a little fun too. Like if you don't have a big agenda that week and you get through it fast, do something fun. Go out for beers, do something, because you need that team to all be rowing the same direction, and keep the common company KPIs at the center and how they can all do it, and really keep them working together. Also invest in alternative options. I mean, like I said with that EOS thing, consider something that might help from a systematic approach, keep your teams rowing the right direction. And then also Workplace. I mean, it doesn't cost anything, does it, Amy?
I have a paid one, yes, and
Okay.
I'd say Workplace and Basecamp, and I hate email, and my goal is to stop having conversations in email. Yeah. You know, you're away from your computer for a day, and there's 60 emails. Yeah. It's like, come on, people, put it in Basecamp, and we can have a conversation. Put it on the board, put it in Workplace. I don't need to be emailed the guest satisfaction survey once a day. I do get our KPI one, our revenue one once a day, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, this has got to. I should just. That's why we have a dashboard.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I think that's it. Hopefully you guys got some action and takeaway items and thoughts from us, and hopefully it helped. But thank you everybody for your time.
Thank y'all.
Thanks.
Nice.